The clock is ticking in Charlotte, and the pressure inside Bank of America Stadium is reaching a boiling point. We were told the rebuild was on track, but behind closed doors, the front office is staring at a massive mistake that could derail everything. A high-stakes gamble is failing, and the fallout is about to get messy. Fans are demanding answers, while the decision-makers are already looking for the exit strategy. If this move doesn't happen, the NFC South crown stays out of reach forever. You won't believe which former first-round savior is now officially on the chopping block tonight. Xavier Legette is officially skating on thin ice, and the latest reports from league insiders are nothing short of a total nightmare for the Panthers organization. When Carolina traded back into the first round to secure his services, the expectation was a physical freak who could dominate opposing secondaries, but the reality has been a complete disaster. Bleacher Report just dropped a bombshell listing Legette as a prime candidate to be cut or traded immediately following the upcoming draft. Think about this, a former first-round pick becoming expendable after just 2 seasons. That is a massive indictment of the previous regime's scouting, but Dan Morgan has to clean up the mess now. The numbers are frankly staggering in all the wrong ways. Legette averaged a pathetic 24 yards per game last season. His production didn't just stall, it fell off a literal cliff. We saw his catches drop from 49 down to 35. His yardage plummeted. Even his touchdown totals are heading in the wrong direction. But here's the problem. It's not just the stats. My sources inside the building are pointing at the tape, and it is ugly. We are talking about dropped balls on crucial third downs, lazy route running that disrupts the timing of the entire offense, and a complete inability to create separation against even mediocre defensive backs. Even with a talent like Teteroa McMillan on the other side taking all the defensive attention, Legette couldn't find a way to get open. It was supposed to be easier for him, but instead, he shrunk under the bright lights of the NFL. The coaching staff is losing patience because you simply cannot hide a receiver who doesn't win his one-on-one matchups. Now it gets serious because the NFL draft is only a week away, and the smoke surrounding a replacement is becoming a wildfire. The Panthers are under immense pressure to nail these picks to save Bryce Young's development, and keeping a struggling asset like Legette might be a luxury they can no longer afford. Dan Morgan is known for being aggressive, and he isn't afraid to admit when a move didn't work. The word around the league is that Carolina is already shopping Legette to see if they can salvage any draft capital before they are forced to simply cut ties. But wait until you hear what the GM just said about the first round, because it changes the entire draft board. If you are really following this team through the highs and the lows, you know that these are the moments that define a franchise's future. Real fans already know that we provide the deep dives nobody else will touch. If you want to stay ahead of every roster move and draft leak, you need to hit that subscribe button and join the inner circle right now. We are tracking every lead. Do you think it is time to give up on Legette entirely? Or does he deserve one more training camp to prove us all wrong in Carolina? Dan Morgan is not playing games anymore, and his recent comments have sent shockwaves through the scouting community as he prepares for his most important draft yet. The general manager was asked point-blank about the possibility of drafting a wide receiver in the first round for a 3rd consecutive year, and his response was a cold reality check for anyone currently in that wide receiver room. Morgan stated clearly that there is no rule prohibiting a team from taking a receiver in the first round 3 years in a row. That is a direct shot across the bow for Xavier Legette. But what if I told you this isn't even the biggest problem the Panthers are facing right now? The real issue is the lack of a twitchy, reliable playmaker in the slot who can actually sustain drives. The rumors are intensifying that the Panthers have zeroed in on their target to replace Legette's role, and that name is Casey Conception out of Texas A&M. Conception is everything Legette hasn't been. He is twitchy, he is a vertical threat, and most importantly, he is a monster after the catch. In his final college season, he put up nearly 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns against elite SEC competition. He finished 17th in the entire country in scoring for a reason. Morgan sees a player who can move the chains and potentially handle punt return duties, adding value that Legette simply hasn't provided. The vision in the building is shifting toward a more versatile, high IQ passing game that doesn't rely on raw athleticism that never translates to the field. If Morgan pulls the trigger on Conception, it signals a total shift in philosophy. They want players who can win instantly at the line of scrimmage. The pressure on Morgan is immense because if he misses on another first-round receiver, the fans will revolt. He inherited a mess, but the grace period is over. He needs to find a way to turn this receiving core into a legitimate threat, or the NFC South will remain out of reach. The connection between Morgan's aggressive stance and Concepcion's rising draft stock isn't a coincidence. It's a calculated move to fix a glaring hole. But the logistics of moving on from a recent first-round pick are complicated, and the financial implications are starting to weigh heavy on the front office as the draft clock winds down to zero. The Panthers are now standing at a massive crossroads with two very distinct paths that will determine the fate of the 2025 season. On one hand, they could choose to double down on Xavier Legette, hoping that a new offensive scheme or another year of maturity finally flips the switch. It's a low-cost, high-risk strategy that preserves draft capital for other positions like the offensive line or the edge rush. But if Legette continues to drop balls and run poor routes, they are essentially playing with 10 men on the field. On the other hand, Dan Morgan can choose the scorched earth policy. By drafting a player like KC Concepcion and moving on from Legette, he sends a clear message that mediocrity will not be tolerated in Charlotte anymore. This is about more than just one player. It is about the culture of the entire franchise. The urgency is at an all-time high because Bryce Young needs weapons that he can trust. Every game where a receiver fails to gain separation is another game where Young's confidence could be shaken. The strategic context here is vital because the NFC South is wide open. A legitimate slot threat who can also return punts adds a dynamic layer to the special teams that has been missing for years. However, the consequence of admitting a first-round bust after only 2 years is a tough pill to swallow for the fans and the balance sheet. It would mean the Panthers have essentially lit a first-round pick on fire. But in the modern NFL, you have to be fast to correct your mistakes. The draft is just days away, and the decision made in that war room will echo for years. Will they gamble on potential one last time, or will they pivot to a proven collegiate producer who fits the modern NFL mold? The front office is currently split, and the tension is palpable as they finalize their draft board. Every mock draft has them taking a pass catcher, but the specific name will tell us everything we need to know about how they view the current roster. If they take Concepcion, Legette's time in a Panthers uniform is effectively over. The impact on the locker room will be significant, and the pressure on the rookie will be through the roof from day one in camp. At the end of the day, being a Panthers fan means dealing with the constant cycle of hope and heartbreak, but this situation feels different. This isn't just about a depth chart move. It's about the identity of our team and whether we have the courage to fix what is clearly broken. We've watched Xavier Legette struggle to find his footing, and while we all wanted him to be the next great Carolina receiver, the NFL is a production-based business. If you aren't producing, you are standing in the way of someone who will. The possibility of bringing in a spark plug like KC Concepcion represents a fresh start and a commitment to winning right now. It shows that Dan Morgan isn't interested in protecting the ego of the front office. He's interested in protecting his quarterback and winning football games. We are tired of the excuses and the wait until next year mentality. We want a team that competes every Sunday with playmakers who actually make plays. This draft is the ultimate test for this new regime. They have to prove they can identify talent and, more importantly, that they can build a supporting cast that allows this team to contend in the NFC. The uncertainty is stressful, but it's also the most exciting time to be a fan because change is finally on the horizon. We are standing on the edge of a new era, and the next week will define the next decade of Panthers football. Whether it's a trade, a cut, or a shocking draft day selection, everything is on the table. We need to stay united as a fan base and hold this organization accountable for the decisions they make in the war room. This is our team, and we deserve a product on the field that reflects our passion. Before you go, make sure you've liked this video and subscribed so you don't miss our live draft coverage where we will break down every single pick as it happens. We are your home for everything Carolina Panthers, and we aren't stopping until this team is back on top. What is your honest grade for the Xavier Legette era so far, and who is the one receiver you would move heaven and earth to draft next week? Let us know in the comments below, and let's get the conversation started. Keep pounding, Panthers fans, because the best is yet to come.